What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Train Maxer. It's 3:10 in the morning where I'm at. Been meaning to do this live stream for a while now. There's been some news stories popped up a few weeks back, but I still feel like covering them. Apparently, we've got a couple of American astronauts that are stuck on the International Space Station, so it would seem. And well, NASA doesn't want you to think it's that big of a deal, but well, I don't know. Google's been promoting it like it's that big of a deal, so I think we're going to cover it. Call this the Insomnia Stream because I'm not asleep, so it is what it is. Is that the clip or is that the screen I need? Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. This is from Bloomberg. Bloomberg.com, apparently. This was a headline that popped up on my phone for some reason a couple of weeks ago. All right. Boeing and NASA don't want you to think its astronauts are stranded. This is Boeing Starliner atop ULA's, I don't know what that means, Atlas rocket on May 6th. This is by Lauren Grush on July 3rd of 2024. Howdy, Space Cadets. It's Lauren Grush in Austin. Have you caught all the headlines about Boeing's Starliner capsule being stuck in space, leaving its crew stranded? NASA and Boeing aren't too happy about that. But before we discuss that, 3 things you need to know today. SpaceX's value has soared to $210 billion. Amazon's delaying the launch of its internet from space satellites. SpaceX is getting $843 million to guide the International Space Station to a fiery end. Stuck stress. NASA doesn't want you to say the Boeing Starliner astronauts are quote-unquote stranded in space. That was the very loud message from the space agency, and Boeing projected to media on Friday. Officials held a conference call about the delayed Starliner mission currently docked to the International Space Station. No astronauts Barry, quote-unquote, Butch Wilmore and Sunita, quote-unquote, Suni Williams are not stuck in space, and yes, they will come home eventually, NASA and Boeing officials said. That doesn't sound too confident. You're going to come home eventually, but, we're not sure when. But the vague answers didn't provide us with much clarity about how severe Starliner situation really is. What was supposed to be roughly a week-long flight test to the ISS is now probably going to last months as NASA and Boeing continue to delay Starliner's return to Earth. They say they want better understanding of a series of technical issues the spacecraft experienced since launching June 5th on its first crewed test flight to space. Confusion surrounded the delays prompted headlines proclaiming that Wilmore and Williams are stuck or stranded in space and that Starliner couldn't bring the crew home. NASA and Boeing admonished reporters for the phrasing, but still haven't given a time frame for the crew's return. Well, fake news. What are you going to do? Pull that up. Let's see here. Fake news, don't talk to me.
You stay categorically.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you stay as a typical fake news deal? And I think it was a fake report.
My question.
The problem is you don't write the truth. So, as far as fake news, don't talk to me. Go ahead. Can you stay categorically.
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you stay as a typical fake news deal? And I think it was a fake report.
My question.
The problem is you don't write the truth. So, as far as fake news, don't talk to me. Go ahead. Can you stay categorically.
You are
Fake news, don't talk to me. All right, getting back to this. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, I already read that. I want to make it very clear that Butch and Suni are not stranded in space. Steve Stitch, a NASA program manager overseeing the mission, said, "Our plan is to continue to return them on Starliner and return them home." NASA astronauts, get out of my way. NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore Wright and Suni Williams at Kennedy Space Center in April. Considering that this was supposed to be a week-long mission and they're still up there, this is kind of like Gilligan's Island in space. A 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour. Mark Nappy, a Boeing vice president also overseeing the mission, remarked how, quote-unquote, painful it was to read all the headlines and stories he's been getting on his Google alerts. Well, you know what, son of a bitch? I've been getting the fucking Google alerts too. And I didn't fucking sign up for this shit. So, you should know about this shit since it's your fucking company, dumbass. Like, you should care a lot more about technical difficulties with your spacecraft than I should when I didn't even sign up for these alerts and they just started popping up on my phone. I'm just saying. So what is ultimately going on? NASA and Boeing say that Starliner is fully capable of bringing Williams and Wilmore back to Earth in the case of emergency. They say that they want to keep Starliner in space for as long as they can to better analyze a series of helium leaks and issues with the vehicle's thrusters, tiny engines that Starliner uses to maneuver through space, that they don't fully understand at the moment. NASA initially gave the impression that Starliner could only spend up to 45 days in space based on the spacecraft's battery and how long it was certified by NASA to last in orbit. But now NASA is hinting the mission will likely last longer since the battery seems to be holding up okay and they plan to certify it for an additional 45 days. For future flight, Starliner is supposed to last up to 6 months in orbit. On the same battery you said could only last, what, a month? Or 45 days, whatever. Okay. I don't know. I mean, a fucking car battery lasts how long? And how different is this battery from a fucking car battery? I'm just saying. I don't get it. Why is this battery not working, but a fucking car battery fucking works for years? Like, I don't know. Engineers have been running a bunch of tests and analysts to figure out why these glitches cropped up once Starliner reached space. Yeah, you'd think you would have figured that shit out before you fucking launched it into space, but okay. Let's just iron out the details once we're in space. Cool. And on Friday, NASA announced that engineers will be conducting an additional set of tests at NASA's White Sands facility. There, they'll fire up a test thruster on the ground similar to the one Starliner uses to see if they can replicate how it might behave in space. Once those tests are over, then they'll figure out a plan for landing, Stitch said. None of this sounds good, especially given the stakes. There's always a lot of fuss around the launch of a spacecraft, but returning to Earth is just as risky, if not more so. It's very possible that these issues are not showstoppers, but are being buttoned up ahead of the return. But being buttoned up ahead of the return is still key. I mean, yeah, it's kind of important if you go into space. Coming back to Earth, that's kind of important. I'm just saying. At this point, coming back to Earth from being launched into space is kind of important. I mean, we don't have colonies on Mars. We don't have colonies on Titan. We don't have colonies other places. We don't have generation ships on their way to other star systems. So yeah, it's kind of important coming back to Earth at this point. It hasn't helped that NASA and Boeing have been dropping substantial updates about the program at odd hours, including a blog post at 8 p.m. on June 21st. Nothing screams quote-unquote bad news louder than a Friday night news dump. But another big problem is that NASA and Boeing can't seem to answer a key question. Is Starliner safe to bring the crew home at this very moment? When asked this question on Friday, Stitch gave a lengthy answer full of jargon in lieu of a solid yes or no. A full detail I learned when reporting my book is that shuttle astronauts had an alternate meaning for NASA, never a straight answer. Yeah, that's a good acronym for NASA. Never a straight answer. There you go. It seems that never a straight answer is averse to saying anything definitive. And the end result is just going to be more confusion. Bad breakup. While questions around Starliner's capability to return home, the vehicle... Excuse me, I read that wrong. While questions abound about Starliner's ability to return home, the vehicle did become something of a safe haven last week during an unexpected space debris event. On Thursday, U.S. Space Command confirmed that a decommissioned Russian satellite broke up in orbit quite suddenly, spewing pieces of debris out into space. Commercial space tracking company Leo Labs said it is monitoring roughly 180 pieces of debris, and that the number will probably increase in coming days. It's unclear why exactly why the satellite broke up. It's possible that some part within the satellite exploded, which has happened to failing spacecraft before. Russia also caused a bunch of headaches in 2021 when it destroyed one of its own dead satellites with a missile launch from Earth. There's no confirmation that's what happened here. Still, debris generated from breakups like this are dangerous as the fragments zoom through orbit at thousands of miles an hour, threatening to collide with other healthy spacecraft. As a precaution, astronauts on board the ISS sheltered in their respective docked spacecraft after the breakup, in case they needed to quickly detach from the ISS and head home. So Williams and Wilmore sheltered inside Starliner. The astronauts were ultimately cleared to go back into the space station after about an hour when it was determined the debris didn't pose a threat. It was great learning for us while we're docked at the space station to have this contingency come up, said Stitch, the NASA program manager. Launch whoopsie. Dramatic video surfaced over the weekend of a rocket engine test in China that inadvertently became a rocket flight. On Sunday, Chinese aerospace company Space Pioneer was conducting what is known as a static test fire of Tianlong 3 reusable rocket, during which the vehicle is meant to remain constrained to the launch pad while the engines are ignited. But the rocket launched itself off the pad instead, careening into the air before eventually plummeting into the hilly area of Yongyai in central China, causing a massive explosion. We have a video of that, apparently, courtesy of CNN. Share. Can we share this tab instead? Let's do it. You know what? Let's not do that. Shit. Let's see here. I see there's some comments. I'll get to that in a minute. Let's see. Various onlookers caught the runaway rocket on camera, posting video to social media. Space Pioneer said in a statement that its official WeChat account that there were no casualties. Okay, that's good. Test was meant to prepare the Tianlong 3 for its inaugural launch in the coming months, but it's possible that it may face a delay now. Okay, we'll take a break here for a second. Got some comments here. For no reason is here. Hello. What are you talking about? Talking about some news stories that popped up on my phone over the last couple of weeks. Space is scary. It might have aliens. Yeah, maybe it might. It might. Space stock watch. Virgin Galactic's true believers held on to their shares through plenty of rocky patches, but last month's reverse stock split, okay, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how those kind of things work. We're going to skip on that because I don't understand how stocks quite work. Okay, I think we're done with that one. Talking about stock shit. I don't know how that works. All right. Sharing this. WEAA. Quote, we're not stuck. Why Boeing Starliner isn't returning to Earth yet. By Geoff. Always confuses me when they spell their name like this. Is this Geoff or is this Jeff? Brumfial. File. I don't know. Weird. July 3rd, 2024. Can we full screen that? We can't full screen that. Why not? Why can't we full screen that? There we go. That's the Starliner that's stuck at the ISS, apparently. The Starliner spacecraft docked with the ISS and orbiting 262 miles above Egypt. Okay. When astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida on June 5th, they thought they'd be back in plenty of time for the Juneteenth holiday. Oh, brother. The two were test driving Boeing's newest spaceship called Starliner. All they had to do was put it through its paces, dock briefly with the ISS, and come home. The entire mission was supposed to last around a week. Instead, a series of leaks and malfunctions have caused NASA to indefinitely delay the duo's return. Just whatever you do, don't say they're stranded. Quote, we're not stuck in space, unquote. Mark Nappy, Boeing's vice president for its commercial crew program, told reporters in a news conference on June 28th, the crew is not in any danger and there's no increased risk when we decide to bring Suni and Butch back to Earth. Here's what's going on with Boeing's newest spacecraft. That's the two of them, apparently. Even before its launch, there were problems. Okay, did Apollo 1 not teach you guys anything? Like, Apollo 1 caught on fire on the launch pad. I'm just saying. Like, you'd think you would get those problems ironed out before you frickin' launch something into space. Especially with people on it. I'm just saying. The development of Starliner has not gone smoothly. During its first test flight in 2019, which didn't have people on board, it failed to reach its expected orbit. The problem was later traced to an onboard clock that was set incorrectly, causing Starliner's thrusters to fire at the wrong time. I mean, I'm not an expert on space shit. I'm not an engineer. I'm none of that shit. But even I am aware of the fact that when stuff goes into space, the clocks don't align with what's on Earth. Like the space station or the space shuttle clocks, when they've been in orbit for a while, they're not in sync with Earth because gravity does affect time. I don't know how that works, but that's how that works. Doesn't make sense to me, but I've heard of that. I don't know how these engineers that work at NASA haven't heard of it. Just saying. Starliner never made it to the ISS on that trip, and NASA required a second test flight without any astronauts. When it launched again in 2022, two thrusters on Starliner failed to fire as expected. It successfully switched to backup thrusters and docked to the space station. Astronauts were finally supposed to launch last year, but then Boeing found two more problems with the spacecraft, issues with the parachute system that would allow them to float back to Earth, and tape used to hold the wiring that posed a potential fire risk. Fixing both issues pushed back the launch to this spring. Finally, Williams and Wilmore were strapped in on May 6th when no more problems appeared. A stuck valve on the rocket launching Starliner had to be replaced, and mission engineers discovered the Starliner itself was leaking helium. So your spaceship's leaking its fuel, but you're going to launch it anyway. Good job, NASA. Way to go. That's genius. Fucking brilliant. Helium gas is used to pressurize Starliner's propulsion system, and NASA took several weeks to determine the leaks weren't serious enough to cause the helium to run out during the mission. This is Starliner atop an Atlas V rocket taking off on June 5th. Thruster cluster leads to fluster. That's quite a mouthful. When all systems were finally, quote-unquote, go, Starliner's launch went off without a hitch. On June 5, Williams and Wilmore sailed into orbit. But as they approached the ISS, new problems appeared. 5 of 28, quote-unquote, reaction control system thrusters aboard Starliner's service module shut themselves down unexpectedly, and the spacecraft was left holding just outside the docking port while engineers did some troubleshooting. Eventually, the spacecraft docked successfully with the space station, and 4 of the 5 thrusters were brought back online, but NASA later disclosed it had found 4 additional helium leaks in different parts of the spacecraft, bringing the total to 5. NASA now says that it needs to conduct additional testing and evaluating of these issues before Williams and Wilmore can return to Earth. Space Agency engineers suspect that faulty seals may be behind the helium leaks, which they think may pose little risk. But the thruster issues have been harder to pin down. Boy, I'm glad I'm not an astronaut right now. I'm glad I'm not counting on NASA to get me frickin' home. This is crazy. Because they're still stuck up there, last I've heard. NASA says that starting this week, it will be conducting extensive tests of Starliner thrusters at its White Sand. All right, we already talked about that. Facility in New Mexico. Test thruster. To see if engineers can replicate the problems. Yeah, we already read that part on the other article. Once the testing is done, then we'll look at the plan for landing. Okay, yeah, we already read that part in the other article. Don't say stuck. Well, I don't know what else you want to call it, but it seems like these guys are stuck up there. Even before the latest press conference, news media was speculating that Williams and Wilmore might be stuck aboard the station. It's a claim that Boeing in particular seems to bristle at. The astronauts, quote, are not stranded at the ISS. Read the first line of the company's statement on the matter, which NPR received June 26th. They're, quote, not stuck in space, says Laura Forz. Come on, people. What is with names like this? I can't fucking pronounce this shit. What is this, Polish or something? What the fuck? I can't fucking pronounce that. I can't pronounce that shit. No offense, lady, but I can't fucking pronounce your fucking last name. I'm just saying. Executive dress. Okay. Some space consulting group. Another name I can't fucking pronounce. Great. So the astronauts are in the ISS. Okay, great. Starliner is designed to remain in space up to 210 days. Test flight was supposed to be 45 days due to the spacecraft's limited battery life. But Stitch says the space station is recharging the batteries as designed, and NASA is looking to extend that limit. In a real pinch, NASA could use either a SpaceX Dragon capsule or a Russian Soyuz capsule to bring the duo home, but whatever her name is, doubts that will be necessary. Yeah, I was thinking a Soyuz capsule. Those kind of have a proven track record of getting, well, cosmonauts down back to Earth safely. I was surprised that hasn't been considered, but apparently it has been. I don't see this as being anything critical or life-threatening, Laura F., whatever her name is, says. I just think they're being extra cautious, as they should be, because this vehicle is not operating as intended. Yeah. Laura F. notes that the problems with the helium system and the thrusters are located in Starliner's service module, a section of the spacecraft that will be jettisoned before landing. Okay, we're not even going to bring that part back to Earth, so what's the problem with it? I don't know. It wasn't a problem for Apollo 13. I don't understand why it's a problem for Starliner 2 or whatever the hell number that it is. Whatever. For that reason, she says, engineers may want to keep Starliner at the station longer so they can gather more data from the module before it burns up during reentry. As further evidence of NASA's confidence in Starliner, Williams and Wilmore took shelter inside the spacecraft last week after a Russian satellite broke apart. Blah, blah, blah. We already talked about that. Starliner's future could be in limbo. 2014, Boeing received a $4.2 billion contract from NASA to build Starliner. The spacecraft was supposed to ferry astronauts regularly to and from the International Space Station within the decade. Well, it's a decade. And it's not succeeded yet, apparently. Because they brought astronauts up there, but they're stuck up there. Oh, but we're not supposed to say they're stuck, and that makes it better. Okay. Those flights are now years behind schedule, and the delays have cost Boeing at least $1.5 billion in losses. No, don't invest in Boeing. Yes. Meanwhile, rival company SpaceX, which was just awarded $2.6 billion, successfully flew humans in 2020 and has completed 8 regular crewed missions for NASA to the space station. Well, it sounds like Elon's figured it out. Ron Epstein, an analyst at Bank of America, says that the problems are part of the bigger issues at the aerospace giant. I don't think you can look at it in isolation, he says. Boeing has seen problems with its 737 MAX aircraft, including a door that flew off. Yeah. I can't really talk about that too much right now. Boeing, maybe you should just stick to making military aircraft, because that seems to be what you're good at. I'm just saying. All right. I think. Oops. Can we undo this whole? This is full screen. What are we doing? I think that's enough of that. I've only been going 30 minutes. Okay. Damn, it feels a lot longer than that. I've got one more story. One more story. What do we got? All right, we got it on here. Okay, it's pulled up. Let me full screen this one too. All right, this is NPR, February 21, 24. The ISS retires soon. NASA won't run its future replacement, by Katie Klein. The ISS space station is pictured from SpaceX Crew Dragon Endeavour during a fly around of the orbiting lab November 8, 2021. Okay. Since it's... Come on, get out of the way. Considering our fucking tax dollars pay for this shit, there shouldn't be a fucking paywall. This should be fucking public domain, since our fucking tax dollars fucking pay for you, NPR. Just saying. Since its first modules landed at the end of 1998, I didn't realize that was when the International Space Station started. I thought it started earlier than that. The ISS has been orbiting 250 miles above the Earth. By the end of 2030, NASA plans to crash the ISS into the ocean after it is replaced with a new space station, a reminder that nothing within Earth's orbit can stay in space forever. NASA is collaborating on developing a space station owned, built, and operated by a private company, either Axiom Space, Voyager Space, or Blue Origin. NASA is giving each company hundreds of millions of dollars in funding and sharing their expertise with them. Eventually, they will select one company to officially partner with and have them replace the ISS. NASA says this will help them focus on deep space exploration, which they consider a much more difficult task. But any company that is able to develop their own space station, get approval from the federal government, and launch it in space will be able to pursue their own deep space missions, even without the approval of NASA. Bill McAllister, director of Commercial Space Division of NASA, told NPR's Morning Edition that NASA does not want to own in perpetuity everything in low Earth orbit, which is up to 1,200 miles above Earth's surface. We want to turn these things over to other organizations that could potentially do it more cost effectively and then focus our research and activities on deep space exploration, said McAllister. McAllister says the ISS could stay in space longer, but it's much more cost effective for NASA to acquire a brand new station with new technology. NASA would then transition to purchasing services from commercial entities as opposed to the government building a next generation commercial space station. How space stations of the past inform the future. The ISS was designed in the 80s, so the technology when it was first built was very different from what is available today. I kind of see this like an automobile. When we bought the automobile in 1999, it was state of the art. It has been great, and it serves us well and continues to be safe. But it's getting older. It's getting harder to find spare parts. The maintenance for that is becoming a larger issue, McAllister said. A new private space station will have a lot of similarities and some differences from the current ISS. Robin Gatens, director of the ISS, says that despite it aging, not all the technology on the ISS is out of date. We've been evolving the technology on the ISS since it was first built. So some of these technologies will carry over to these private space stations, says Gatens. We've upgraded the batteries, we've upgraded and added solar arrays that roll out and are flexible. We've been upgrading our life support systems. This is a view from Thomas Marshburn on December 2nd, 2021 of the ISS and Earth. So to all you flat earthers out there, yeah, that looks real staged, doesn't it? Yeah, that's real faked. Uh-huh. Yeah, fake flat earthers out there. There you go. Fucking A, man. I can't believe that's still a thing. Can't fucking believe that's still a fucking thing. Paolo Lozano is the director of the Space Propulsion Laboratory at MIT and an aerospace engineer. He says, NASA has already changed the solar panels at least once and switched them from these very large arrays that produce relatively little power and to the smaller arrays that produce much more power. All the computer power at the beginning is nothing compared to what can be done today. Gatens says the structure of the space station, which is the size of a football field, is what can't be upgraded and replaced, and something of that size is costly for NASA to maintain. The big structure, even though it's doing very well, has a finite lifetime. It won't last forever. It is affected by the environment that it's in, and every time we dock a vehicle and undock a vehicle, the thermal environment puts stresses and loads on that primary structure that will eventually make it wear out, says Gatens. Gatens says we can also expect a new space station to be designed a little more efficiently and the right sized for the amount of research that NASA and its partners are going to want to do in low Earth orbit. NASA astronaut Megan MacArthur during an experiment on ISS May 26, 2021. What astronauts want in new stations? The structure of the ship is also extremely important to the people who work there. I was just thinking, it said this is a 4-minute read. This seems like I'm going on more than 4 minutes. I'm just noticing. Maybe I read slow. The ISS carries scientists who perform research that can only be done in the weak gravity of space, like medical research. In space, cells age more quickly and conditions progress more rapidly, helping researchers understand the progression of things like heart disease or cancer more quickly. That sounds like a net negative in space. You age more rapidly, and if you got cancer, it grows faster. Great. Wonderful. Researchers also work to understand what happens to the human body when it's exposed to microgravity. The research is aimed at helping develop ways to counteract the negative effects of being in space and let astronauts stay there longer, something essential to getting human on Mars. Gayton says that a new space station will have updated research facilities. I'm looking forward to seeing a very modern laboratory equipment on these space stations. We say that the International Space Station has a lot of capability, but it's more like a test kitchen. I'm looking forward to seeing the future commercial space stations that take these laboratory capabilities and really develop them into state-of-the-art space laboratories, says Gaytons. The long and the short is they're going to take the space station, the ISS, they're going to crash it into the ocean. On top of having modern research facilities, new space stations will likely be designed to provide a cleaner environment for researchers. If you see pictures of the station, you'll think, how can they work there? It looks cluttered, it looks messy. Astronaut Peggy Whitson told NPR. She spent more time in space than any other woman and is the first woman to command the ISS. Whitson is now director of human spaceflight and an astronaut at Axiom Space, one of the companies funded by NASA to develop the space station. Whitson said the reason there are cables all over the place is because the structure of the station wasn't designed for some of the systems it has now. She thinks having a method of making a station even more adaptable to new technology will be important in terms of user experience. Whitson doesn't know what technology will be available 5 years from now, but she said Axiom Space will want to take advantage of whatever they can get their hands on, ideally without wires everywhere. I mean, so what? The space station doesn't have fucking Bluetooth? I mean, like, I've got fucking Bluetooth right now. Like, why doesn't ISS have that? Like, I'm just saying. That is a hell of a view of Earth from there. I would like to say that cabling and networking will be behind the panels so that it's easier for folks to move around in space, Whitson said. Having and building in that adaptability is one of the more critical parts, I think, of building a station for low Earth orbit. Paulo Lozano said that many of the electronic components in the ISS are bulky, but that electronics are smaller. I wasn't expecting that to be a she. Usually, Paulo, that would normally be a dude in those kind of languages. Whatever. It's a she, apparently. Okay, cool. Paulo is a she. I would think Paula would be a she, but it's Paulo. Okay, cool. She expects the interior of the future stations might be a bit different. At the current ISS, there is one small inflatable module. The structure flies up, collapsed, and is then... Alright, I think I'm going to have to end this here pretty soon. I'm getting kind of tired. I'm misreading shit. At the current ISS, there is one small inflatable module. That structure flies up, collapsed, and then expands as it gets filled with air once it's attached to the primary structure of the station, with it literally blowing up like a kind of balloon. Gayton said they're looking at multiple elements of a new space station being inflatable. I don't know if I'm getting just too tired to read or what, but that was kind of hard to read for some reason. Okay, we only got a few more paragraphs left. Power through it. Power through it. You can do it. Whitson told NPR that the space station Axiom Space is developing, they will have windows in the crew quarters and a huge cupola. What she describes as an astronaut's view to the world. On the ISS, they have a cupola you can pop your head in and shoulders into and see 360-degree views of space and look down at the Earth. Apparently, that's the current cupola. I mean, it looks like a pretty decent view to me, but whatever. On the proposed Axiom space station, Whitson said the cupola is so large that the astronauts will be able to float their whole body in there and have it be an experience of basically almost flying in space. Kind of looks like you got your whole body in that one, but okay. Why commercialize low Earth orbit? NASA hopes that by handing responsibility of an ISS replacement over to private companies, it will allow the agency to develop technology more quickly and focus on their next goal of putting a station beyond low Earth orbit for the first time. Current proposed low Earth orbit stations include the Lunar Gateway, which is NASA's planned space station to the moon. What the space stations of today are doing is just paving way for humans to actually explore deeper into space, which is going to be a significantly harder challenge to accomplish. Space stations of today are essentially stepping stones towards that goal, said Lozano. Well, I don't know. I think the Chinese are going to beat us back to the moon. Just saying. Because they're not dicking around waiting to build a fucking space station to launch from there to the moon. They're like shooting stuff right at the moon. Just saying. I mean, yeah, they're having rockets fly off randomly and, hit random villages or whatever the fuck, too. But whatever. Gayton says one piece of technology that is being developed at Blue Origin is a big rotating space station that, when finished, would have artificial gravity. Okay, so we're finally going to have the technology from 2001. What is it? 2001: A Space Odyssey? Is that what the name of that movie is? Because that space station fucking had that shit where they had fucking artificial gravity. I mean, it seems like it could have been developed a while ago, but what do I know? For long trips in space, the lack of gravity is the main issue for the human body, causing bone loss and other health issues. If you could recreate that in space, that would be very beneficial, Gayton said. Well, no shit. Maybe we ought to fucking do that before we start going to Mars and other fucking places. Lozano says that a space station beyond low Earth orbit would need new technology that is radically different from what's been used at the ISS. And both NASA and Lozano don't think that it's possible to venture deeper into space and eventually get a human to Mars with U.S. government funding alone. I don't know. I think if Werner von Braun was alive today, I think he would probably be able to do it. But, he was kind of a visionary. I don't think we're very far away in terms of technology and development. I think we're a little bit far away in terms of investment because space technology is quite expensive and sometimes a single nation cannot really make it work by itself. So you need international cooperation, Lozano said. Do I have it on here? I don't know. There it is. There it is.
All you care about is money. All you care about is money. All you care about is money.
You don't know what you're talking about, do you?
Sir?
I said, you don't know what you're talking about.
So, see, I know certain manosphere adjacent channels like to bitch and complain that all other manosphere channels talk about is, all you talk about is women all day. All you talk about is women, blah, blah, blah. I want to talk about other shit. I don't want to talk about women all the fucking time. Okay? And I just gave an example of that tonight. So, I'm going to call it a night. For no reason, thank you for stopping by. This has been Train Maxer's show. I'm going to call it a night. Peace out.